Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're tackling a pretty massive headache for any site manager: dewatering. Specifically, we're going to cut right through the dense regulatory jargon of the EPA's Construction General Permit, focusing in on Module 3, which covers erosion and sediment controls. Look, if you're managing a site, dewatering is just an inevitable challenge. But getting that water off your site without completely polluting local waterways, well, that takes strategy. So let's break down the daily protocols for turbidity monitoring and inspections so you can stay compliant and actually feel confident doing it.
Here is our roadmap for the day. First up, mapping your discharge points. Second, equipping your stormwater team. Third, we'll hit the daily dewatering inspection steps. Fourth, recording visual pollution indicators. And finally, corrective action for exceedances. Let's dive in.
Section 1. Mapping your discharge points. And honestly, this starts right in the trailer.
Before you even lace up your boots, you've got to ask yourself one absolutely critical question. Where is your dewatering water actually going? It sounds simple, right? But this single destination literally dictates your entire workflow, especially if your site discharges into what the EPA classifies as sensitive waters.
To figure that out, you're going to open up your Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, or SWPPP. Your site map is basically your treasure map here. It's going to tell you if your receiving waters are impaired for sediment or if they're designated as high-tier sensitive waters. If you're discharging there, boom, that triggers mandatory daily turbidity testing. You've also got to verify if you're pumping into a municipal storm sewer system, an MS4, and you need to pinpoint your exact sampling locations before you even step outside.
All right, moving to Section 2, equipping your stormwater team with the essential toolkit.
You know, you really can't monitor water quality based on just a gut feeling. You need the right gear. The absolute star of the show is an EPA-approved turbidity meter that reports in NTUs, specifically conforming to methods like EPA 180.1. Add to that your clean sample cuvettes, some fresh calibration solutions, your standard PPE to keep you safe, and of course, your standardized data logs. Definitely don't head to the outfall without the whole shebang.
Think about what that toolkit is actually testing for. It's testing for turbidity, or simply put, the cloudiness of the water. Your meter measures this by passing a beam of light right through your sample vials. You'll see a huge difference between a clear sample, which means low NTUs, and one that looks milky or murky. That murkiness, that's suspended sediment, and it could absolutely devastate a local aquatic ecosystem if it gets out.
Okay, Section 3. Daily dewatering inspection steps. Now we're putting boots on the ground.
Listen, if your pumps are running, you are officially on the clock for a daily inspection. It's a clear step-by-step. Step 1. Estimate your daily discharge rate in gallons per day. Step 2. Walk the line. You need to actively observe the flow from your treatment control all the way down to the final discharge point. Step 3. Snap photos of the water before treatment, the control itself, and the final discharge. And finally, if sensitive waters are involved, you've got to collect your daily grab sample for turbidity analysis.
Your photo documentation literally has to tell the whole story. You want to capture the erosion and sediment controls in action, like a filter bag managing the water, and also the exact point where that treated water hits the receiving stream. Don't skip this, because these daily photos are your ultimate proof of compliance.
Let's look at Section 4, recording visual pollution indicators, and what exactly to look for.
Now, your meter gives you a hard number, sure, but your eyes, they're your very first line of defense. A compliant discharge is unmistakable because it is uncontaminated and crystal clear. A problematic discharge, on the other hand, stands out like a sore thumb. We're talking murky water, strange smells, or really obvious suspended solids floating around.
In fact, the EPA literally requires you to hunt down specific visual indicators of pollution. Things like sediment plumes, unusual colors, distinct chemical or organic odors, floating foam, or maybe an oily sheen on the water or the shoreline. If you spot any of these, that means your erosion and sediment controls are failing. You have to document that trigger and immediately pivot to corrective action.
Say you pull a sample and it comes out looking super cloudy and murky. Before it even touches your meter, you've got a massive visual red flag that sediment is bypassing your filtration system altogether. It's telling you right then and there that your current controls are either totally mismatched for the soil type or they are desperately crying out for some maintenance.
Which brings us to Section 5, corrective action for exceedances, taking control.
50 NTUs. That's the magic number. It's the default benchmark threshold established by the EPA. Now, listen closely to this part. If the weekly average of your daily turbidity results exceeds this 50 NTU benchmark, you trigger a mandatory corrective action response. And even crazier, if any single daily sample hits a staggering 355 NTUs or higher, you've got to shut off the dewatering discharge as soon as it's safely possible.
So, what happens if you hit that exceedance? Well, first off, don't panic. Just follow the protocol. First, safely shut off the discharge valve immediately. Second, play detective and investigate your controls. Are they undersized? Maybe installed wrong? Is a hose leaking somewhere? Third, make the physical changes. Swap out the filter media, dredge a sediment basin, or maybe even install an entirely new treatment control to wrestle those turbidity levels back below 50 NTUs.
There's a really important regulatory nuance we need to cover here. Simply exceeding that 50 NTU benchmark is not inherently a permit violation on its own. It's actually an action level. It's just a trigger telling you your controls aren't working. However, ignoring that exceedance, failing to investigate it, and failing to implement corrective action, that is absolutely a violation of the permit.
Okay, so you've made your fixes. But guess what? The job isn't done until the paperwork is finished. You must meticulously document this entire sequence in your corrective action log. Record the date you spotted the issue, the exact trigger, like a super high NTU reading, the specific repairs you made, and the date you completed them. Seriously, if it's not in the log, to an inspector, it never happened.
As we wrap up this explainer, I'm going to leave you with a final thought to take with you onto the job site. When you pull out your swap and your turbidity meter tomorrow morning, ask yourself, are you just checking off a regulatory box, or are your controls truly protecting that fragile ecosystem living just downstream from your discharge pipe? Keep learning, keep inspecting, and stay focused out there.